Thanks for joining us at All That Dazzles today. My name's Daz, and today I'm joined by a legend in the world of musical theatre. I have the pleasure to be speaking to the man whose music you will find on Bring It On, If Then, and Next to Normal, to name just a few. He's about to launch Next to Normal in London and will be treating us to a few concerts of his own while he's here. It is, of course, the brilliant Tom Kitt. So, Tom, thanks for joining me today.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. I guess I should start by saying welcome to London. How are you finding it so far?
I love it. I got here yesterday. I haven't had a chance to explore too much, but just walking around, it's just been wonderful to be in the city and, of course, to be around Next to Normal. I was with the band yesterday, and to be back inside of that music, I texted Michael Starobin just to say how wonderful it was to be living in all of that work again. And it's such a visceral walk down memory lane. So it's been beautiful so far.
Brilliant. There's a couple of different projects you're involved with we need to talk about. So obviously we've just touched on Next to Normal. So let's start with that. So it's the long-awaited arrival of Next to Normal over in London. It opens at the Donmar Warehouse later this month. I guess what I need to know is, and in the nicest way possible, what took you so long?
Well, it wasn't up to me. I would have been here as soon as possible. But certainly it feels like everything's aligned to be the Donmar, to be with Michael Longhurst and his brilliant team. It's very meaningful that it's his final show at the Donmar. So it's really quite an honor. And I don't know, there's something about it just feels right in the moment right now.
So that's what I was going to say. Were you waiting for the right place and people for it to come here? And it's, so I should say it's the line now. So Donmar and Michael are the right ones.
It seems that way, certainly. It's not something that I had or felt like I could make happen um, or put into the universe these last few years. But Michael approached Brian and I. Obviously, he's a brilliant creator, brilliant director, and it just seemed like the everything was lining up in the perfect way.
Why do you think the Donmar Warehouse is the right space for it in London?
Well, I think Next Normal has always been the kind of piece that benefits from a wonderful intimate space. That being said, I think something that I've marveled at with the show, and this goes all the way back to the brilliant Michael Greif's initial production at Second Stage, but I've seen Michael's production at a venue like the Amundsen in Los Angeles. So it retains it being that intimate quality, even if it's in a bigger space. But certainly when you have um, a legendary intimate space like the Donmar, it seems like the perfect place for it.
There's something very special about the Donmar. I've been lucky to see quite a few productions over the last couple of years, and I'm always quite blown away by what they do there. For such a small space, they create a lot of magic. I remember
Yeah.
there was one production last year where they had a ski slope going from the top all the way down, like with the audience, and
Wow.
it's like that's unheard of for as such a small theatre.
Yeah.
So yeah, it might not have been the venue we'd have expected for it, but God, it's a good theatre. So very
Oh,
excited to
wonderful
be there.
theater. Everyone raves about it. And I again, I feel quite honored to be here working there.
Cool. So what can people expect from this production of Next to Normal?
Well, I'm just getting sort of on the ground, so I'm seeing things for the first time. But what I know, having been through the audition process, you're going to see an unbelievable cast. Um, Talking to Michael and Nigel Lilly, hearing the band yesterday, it's rendered by wonderful artists, and it'll be interesting, certainly after everything we've been through these last years and continue to go through how the story of Next Normal will resonate. I know that for me, it's been just the most wonderful discovery in my life to create a piece like Next to Normal, and to be able to speak to issues that are very important. And so I find that it teaches me about the world when I reconnect with it. Now, the father of three children who are grown. My third child wasn't born yet when Next Normal premiered on Broadway, and my daughter was just about to be born. She was born the week after we opened on Broadway, and my older son, was only 4. So they're going to be here with me, and they're going to see it for the first time. Like the audiences that come to it, I'm really looking forward to feeling how the piece in this moment will affect me.
Okay. Um, I mean, from like what you've seen so far, are there any changes from Broadway that we can expect? So obviously, it's been a little while and different country, different audiences.
Not that I know of, but I'll start to sit in with the cast in the coming days. Even just listening to the band, I could hear a couple little musical things that felt really interesting, and I'm curious to see how they match what they're doing on stage. But nothing major that I know of.
Okay. What do you think it is about the show that makes it so special to so many people?
Um, it's very hard to answer a question like that about your own work. But what I've experienced is that there's a communal um, experience in the theater that people who really connect to it know someone, have been through in their own life um, issues, not necessarily, again, anything that's autobiographical, but I think there's a catharsis to watching a family deal with trauma and grief and loss, and find a way um, to sort of pull through it together. I'm always attracted to stories where people can overcome challenges, where there's hope, where you get to emote with people in real time, and then see how it affects your life walking out of the theater. And from the first time I experienced Next to Normal in the theater, there was laughing, and then there was a lot of crying, and oftentimes I was joining them in that. So I think that that kind of experience in the theater, where you emoting with theater goers, and sort of feeling a story that really sort of resonates, and can speak to your own life, is a powerful experience to have.
Did the initial reaction to this show surprise you, or when you were working on it, did you know that you were onto something special with this one?
Well, it was such a long road for Next to Normal. It started as a 10-minute musical that Brian Yorkie and I wrote the BMI Musical Theater Workshop, and then we just couldn't put it down, kept working on it, went to Village Theater, New York Musical Theater Festival, second stage, back out of town to Arena stage, and then came back to Broadway. So the whole thing surprised me that it was able to keep going, that there were people who just really believed in it. David Stone, moved mountains to be able to bring it to Broadway. That time we came to Broadway, it was a very difficult time. We were in the middle of a financial crisis, and a show like this didn't seem like it was going to have a chance, and somehow it ran. So everything about it has surprised me. But I remember the first time that I watched I would say the last 15 minutes of the show. Brian had scripted it out, and for some reason, when I saw it on the page, I wasn't convinced, or I didn't know how it would feel. And then when I saw the actors first go for those last 15 minutes, I was a mess. I was weeping. I was outside of what I had written, just watching a story that was affecting me. So the fact that I felt that, and then I saw other people around me feel those same things, that was a great surprise, and a wonderful revelation.
Okay. Um, so while you're in London, you're also playing free concerts at Zadell. So what can people expect from them?
Well, the great thing about for me getting a chance to do concerts is that I get to tell some stories behind some of the compositions. Of course, it's a select group of songs that are going to fit well for me, but it's nice to get to tell stories, and talk about, also present things from different projects. Maybe I'm still sort of figuring out exactly what the set list is, but there might be a couple of new things that I get a chance to debut. But it was something that I did in New York at Feinstein's 54 Below. And as I didn't know what to expect. And as I was going through the show, it just felt really natural and wonderful to get to tell these stories. And I've always loved performing. So I'm excited to be here getting a chance to do that.
Cool. Um, we've heard rumours of If Then heading to the UK at some point. Are there any truth to those rumours and anything you can share at this time?
I don't know what I'm allowed to say, but I'll just say I hope those rumors are true. And if they do happen to be true, then it would be, again, a great opportunity. Something I would love to be able to have another musical that I get to work on, and put up here in the UK, and a piece that I think that me as a writer uh, living with these last years, there are some things that I know I'm interested in looking at. So as opposed to something like Next to Normal, where I feel like we were done, if then there might be more of a creative exploration, not just production, but also in the writing.
It really is a fantastic show, one that I'm like privileged to have seen myself, and
Oh,
it's
thank
one that
you.
a lot of musical theatre fans will talk to me about it and say it's one of some of their like wish lists to come over here. So I'd
Oh,
love
that's
to
great to
just to
hear.
get a chance.
Well, maybe that will
Um,
help bring it to fruition.
we'll start the campaign. Bring your then to London.
Fantastic.
Can we expect to see any other shows that you've been involved with heading our way in the near future?
I hope so. There's a few that it would be wonderful to see productions here that I've been involved with in the past few years, like Flying Over Sunset, Almost Famous, Freaky Friday, and there was talk of Jagged Little Pill. I'm really hopeful that that will find its way here too as well.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't sure whether to ask you about Jagged Little Pill because there was that infamous advert, fall 2022. We're now nearly a year later, but you know, hey, time travel, you never know. Uh,
Exactly.
um, what's important to you when writing a new musical? Do you have a specific process, or does it vary with each show?
It varies depending on the show and the tonality of that show, but I always look for a story that I feel like I can pour myself into, a story that affects me in some way, a chance for me to hopefully do something different as a composer. Um, and I like to work on stories that I feel can have an impact with an audience. In terms of process, it really varies, but as a writer, I usually just sit down and start to mess with different motifs on the piano, see if something starts to catch fire, and I can start to explore it. Usually with some kind of a figure, some kind of a pattern. Listening to Next Normal yesterday, I was reminded of all of those moments on that score. But normally, when I sit down, something will happen, and it's just a question of whether coming back to it in a few hours, I'll still like it, or I'll want to start over and try something else.
Cool. So you've been involved in many different productions. As hard as it is to choose, do you have a favorite?
Do I have a favorite? That I couldn't choose. There, I love them all, but you know, Next to Normal obviously will always hold a special place in my heart. It was the show that I when I was first working on it with Brian, I had this dream that one day I would see actors singing these songs, and I'll never forget walking into second stage and seeing Mark Wendland's set and greeting Michael Greif, and that dream had come true, and it seemingly in an instant. So that will always be very special for me.
Speaking of special, what would you say if someone was to ask you what makes theatre such a special art form? What obviously we're two theatre lovers, but if you were trying to explain it to someone who might not quite have the same passion for it, how would you describe it?
Oh, I would say that there's nothing like watching live theater. It challenges you. Um, we are so wired right now in society with screens, and it's a constant collision. And theater makes you find stillness. You put everything away, and you have to engage with something on stage. And we're all a little vulnerable being in the theater because we allow ourselves to emote in a public way. And there's something about watching theater, the way people have such passion for it. Um, there's just nothing like it, and it can't be replaced. You can't. As I never worried about. I mean, obviously, I don't want people ever videoing my work. You know, and but at the same time, I never worry about whether that's going to compete with going to see the actual show, because the live experience is irreplaceable. And it is a community, and you get to look around and see what people are feeling. So I just think that experience, if we could bottle it, we would, but luckily we have to go to the theater to experience it.
It's interesting. Like during the lockdowns, we had like a big influx of streams, like stream theatre, and it was great to still get that connection. And I loved it, and I took in as much as I can because I was desperate for any connection I could get. But then that moment, I sat in a theatre social distance, mask on. It's a weird experience, but that first time and every time back, it's been a few years now, you can't beat it. It really is so special. And while, like, you're right, it's nice to get some of these shows filmed now as well. I'd love to get filmed versions of a lot of them, but sitting in the theatre, it is that shared experience.
Oh, and believe me, I would love those film versions too. So I'm there's such a beautiful art to that and capturing. I've had shows captured for Lincoln Center in the library. That's incredibly special. And getting a chance to see SpongeBob captured, and I worked on Grease Live, which was such a wonderful experience. So the art form of that is alive and well. But if we're talking about live theater, there's just again something that's just so magical about that.
Definitely. So I put it out there on Twitter, or whatever it's calling itself this week, for any questions that people had for you. So I wanted to go through a few of them. There
Sure.
were some good ones. So Emily asked if you think Next to Normal will be received differently this time around due to the work that has been done in terms of mental health awareness since it was first seen.
It's a really good question. I'm not sure, and I'm never sure, as any writer is, when you put your work out, what the response will be. But what I do know is that when we were working on Next Normal, it certainly felt like it was not that mental health was not as publicly discussed. So the fact that the conversation is out there and more people are talking about it, I think is a wonderful thing. And however Next Normal can fit into that conversation is something that I'm enormously proud of.
Okay. And then Ella asks, after working on shows like SpongeBob and Almost Famous, and then taking an existing artist songbook on Jagged Little Pill, are there any other artists, stories, TV shows, or films you'd like to turn into a musical that hasn't been done yet?
There's a whole bunch of them. I won't bore you with all of the things. Um, but some of the things that I've mentioned in the past, I've done a couple of interviews, and I think that Bruce Springsteen's masterpiece, Born to Run, would make a thrilling musical. So that would definitely be the top of the list.
I would see that. So, what's next for you after this? So we can see
um,
it.
what's next? After this, I have some things in development. A number of things sort of starting to um, uh, even just ideas that are now coming to fruition, and then there's something I've been working on for a while. It's all in the beginning stage, so I can't talk about anything yet. But there's a number of musicals that I'm starting work on and really excited about.
Okay. So for people that aren't familiar with Next to Normal, what would you say? Why should they go and see that show?
I think that I think one that there is probably a good chance that you don't know the story of Next to Normal, so it's a chance to sit in and feel something unfamiliar. But I've always said that Next to Normal um, offers an emotional experience. Um, it was very important to Brian that there be humor in it, and there is, but I think there's a lot of raw and honest emotion in that show. And if you like to feel those kinds of things in art, I think you may have a powerful experience at the show.
Okay. And then my final question, linked to that one, why should people come to one of your concerts while you're here?
um, I think people should come to one of my concerts because I think you'll have a blast. It's a wonderful sort of intimate chance to, if you've heard my material, really sort of deconstruct it. Just you get to hear me basically on the piano as it was when I first wrote those songs. So a song like I'm Alive, for example, which in Next to Normal is a guitar driven rock song, but I wrote that song on the piano and there's a piano arrangement for it. And it's fun to get to play it. So there'll be some treats like that.
Okay, brilliant. Well, Tom, it's been a real pleasure. So you can catch Tom at Zadell in Piccadilly Circus for free concerts on the 6th and 7th of August. And then Next to Normal begins performances at the Donmar Warehouse on the 14th of August. Can't wait for that. Break a leg for everything, Tom, and thanks everyone for watching. I'll see you at the theatre.
Thank you.
Cheers.